Hello, and welcome back to another episode of the Collective Fix podcast. This is your host, Brandon Bateman, and today I have Tiffany and Josh High joining us. We talk all about what's necessary to build a real estate investment business. We talk about hiring, training, onboarding people, which seats you should fill and how you should fill them, specific sales management tactics, and the story of this company that went from 75% overstaffed all the way to a efficient, functioning real estate investment business, killing it in Columbus, Ohio. I'm excited for you to hear what's in this episode. It's fantastic, and I'll see you there. Tiffany, Josh, welcome to the podcast. How you doing?
Good. Thanks for having us on.
Brandon, what's going on, man?
Yes, I'm excited for you to be here. I am excited for the content that we're going to produce today, and I'm also excited to ask my own questions. So this is a half selfish, half a selfless act of what we're going to do here. But anyways, for those in the industry that might not know you, where you come from, what you guys are doing in business, what's the backstory?
Yeah, so we're business partners and obviously married, and we've been wholesaling and flipping for almost a decade, buying rentals for, 12 or 15 years. And we're based out of Columbus, Ohio. We locked up around like 280 contracts last year. I'd say like a good split between wholesales and flips. And we also have an education company called Results Driven REI, where we're really well known for specifically someone who's already doing deals and taking them from what I like to call like a deal chaser, like they're always just chasing the next deal, into building a legitimate business, because constructing a deal and building a business are two totally different skill sets. And I think that our industry overall lacks like business building skill sets. And so that's really what we focus on the results driven side.
Okay, very cool. And I'm assuming you haven't always had that business building skill set. I'm curious at what point in your history you feel like you made that switch.
I mean, I would say about 2 years into the business, our first year, and I don't know, how many people know our story, and I'll keep it short, but I wasn't really like leaving my corporate career because I didn't like my job or anything like that. My little brother got diagnosed with cancer at the time, and I was about 10 years into my corporate career. And ultimately, I was traveling by a flight Monday through Friday every week. And I really needed to gain control back of my time to help take care of my siblings. And so my cousin at the time was flipping houses, and he was in a program. And I was bored one day. I ended up leaving my corporate career to help my parents, and I had nothing. I had no job, no income. So long story short, I go in to see his flip because I was bored one day. I'm like, hey, can I come see this flip you're working on? I go walk through it and I see the before and after. So I'm like, man, if you can do this, I can do this too. And he said he was going to make $80,000 on it. And so maxed out my credit card that day, joined the program he was in, and jumped into flipping. And the program I had joined at the time was more known, I would say, for flipping and raising money than, marketing and wholesaling and all that. And so my first year in business, we did around 35 to 40 flips, and we were doing in-person appointments. And going into my second year, we had learned what wholesaling was and went from in-person appointments to phone sales. So we went from around 40 flips to 165 wholesale contracts, going from in-person to phone sales. But during that second year, there was really no like mentorship in the industry teaching me how to build a legitimate business. So putting in recruiting, HR, onboarding, training, management, scorecards. And it was just kind of like a fly by night operation. And we had scaled up to 12 closers, doing a third of the revenue that we do today. And we only have 3 closers today. So ultimately it was pure chaos. And I unfortunately hated my life. And I woke up one day on a Sunday, I'll never forget it. I called my mentor and I was just like, look, this is not worth it. I don't even care about the money, the deals, doesn't matter. It was miserable. And I just remember saying like, what do I do now? And he said, well, this is really easy. You're making this overcomplicating. He's like, go in tomorrow and let go of 3/4 your team. And I still remember that day. We walked in the next day, listened to what my mentor told me to do. And I felt very responsible for scaling chaos, because it wasn't impacting like just me, obviously. It was impacting these guys' families. And, owning a business, you have to take a level of responsibility knowing that you're putting food on kids' plates, essentially. And so I went home that night and attempted suicide. And long story short, I obviously survived it, but we came out of that. We ended up keep going somehow. My dad told me to keep going, and he's like, well, at least you know what not to do now. And after thinking about it, Josh and I decided to keep going, and we literally took the thing down to the ground and rebuilt everything, all of our marketing, our systems. We rebuilt the team, and we hired a one-on-one mentor at the time that didn't come from real estate, but had scaled multiple companies. And that person is really responsible for the level of infrastructure that we have today. And ultimately, a year later, it took us 90 days to literally take it down to the ground, rebuild the company. And we did around 300 contracts the following 12 months. And so after we did that, my mentor called me up a year later and said, hey, there's a lot of people going through what you went through a year ago. And that's ultimately why we started Results Driven, is to make sure that people don't end up 6 feet under the ground like I almost did.
Yeah, that's a wild story. That's crazy. And mine looks different in a lot of ways, but I don't know that I know any entrepreneur that doesn't go through a period where they hate their business. I had one of those. I mean, I want to meet the person who doesn't. They're probably just way smarter than us. They just knew from the beginning exactly what to do and how to build it. And it's wild. So I'm curious to dig into some of the specifics of what you've learned about like leading a team, managing different things. Let's start a little bit tactical. So something I've seen you be open about before that I'm kind of curious to understand the details behind it and how it works is that you don't focus on tasks for sales, which I think is unusual. I guess most people I know in the industry are using tasks. Tell me about the philosophy there and what you guys do.
Yeah, the biggest thing that I recognized coming out of we call that experience, we call it the crash. Coming out of the crash, I looked at where did we go wrong? And first and foremost, we looked at ourselves in the mirror and recognized that we were not being the leaders that we needed to be. Now, fast forward to your question here. When I was still sitting somewhat in the sales seat. And after the crash, I definitely was sitting in the sales seat, even though we still had 2 other team members. It was all hands on deck, everyone on sales. And we started to see that people who are good at closing deals, your acquisition specialists, your acquisition managers, your closers, they thrive and love and enjoy the nurture conversations, the closing conversations, having these long drawn out emotional conversations, while they hate prospecting. And so after the crash, we then we asked ourselves, how could we separate prospecting from these nurture and closing conversations? And so that's what led to us bringing on the position that we call follow-up specialist. Now, this is only possible when you have the people who are prospecting, also while you have the people who are also closing. So when I would come into the office every day, after being on the phones and after running marketing for so long, you step foot into your office and you're like, wow, I have 250 tasks today. And then you see like 100 of them, you recognize seller John Smith, who you've called 25 times, who's just not going to answer your call to begin with. And even if he does, the last time you talked to him, he wanted $1 million for his house that's worth $500,000. So like, why, as a closer, that person is not worth my time to call? So instead, how do we shift this over to the prospector, let them call it? And that way, when they get on the phone with them, they can take them through our qualification process and deem, hey, is this a qualified opportunity or not a qualified opportunity? If it's qualified, it's going to go back over to the closer. If it's not, then we're not going to waste our time with it. So what we decided to do is we created views, which helped us shrink down our total, I don't want to call it a task, but follow-ups. We'll call it follow-ups. And because the system was creating these tasks consistently over and over and over again for all of the people that we had ever called and everyone that we attached our name to, and nobody's going to be able to go through and one-off click the call, dial 200, 250, 300 plus tasks. So we created the system in a way that would allow all of this colder opportunity to be picked up by the system. So that way we didn't have to spend our time and attention on it. And we were able to manage our days through what we call views.
So in other words, in Podio, we use views, and in GHL and Salesforce and all those, you can create smart list. And essentially, instead of hand dialing, you can just go through and use a dialer to stream through them faster.
Okay, that makes a lot of sense. Do you have some type of methodology that you use to understand when something falls on a follow-up specialist and when it falls on the acquisitions manager?
Yes, we have a clear SOP that we call the lead status SOP. No matter how the conversation goes, it defines if the conversation goes in this manner, then it's status this and it's followed up in this many days. And that way there's no guesswork and everyone's following the exact same process every single time.
Yeah. I think where you might be going with this question is a lot of times what companies will do is the first person who calls it is essentially responsible for the lead. If they're doing that, they are likely failing the company and losing money and opportunity, because a human being can only follow up with so many people. And if you, like, you know, our team has been with us for 4 or 5 plus years. So imagine if I said, hey, Connor, because you're the first person to call it and your name's attached to it, you are now responsible for the follow-up for the remainder of the life of this lead. He won't physically be able to. And so if he is not in what we call the process of locking the deal up, which we have that all documented, then it goes into a different view for follow-up specialists to work until we're actually making an offer. And that keeps things more streamlined so that closers are focused on the right things that day.
That makes sense. That's super helpful. And that's just based on like certain criteria of the leads. Do you have like any type of number targets there? Like you're looking at like an acquisitions manager should have like this number of leads on their plate at a certain time. How do you guys deal with capacity? I mean, you have 3 closers right now. How do you know if you need 4 closers or if you should have 2?
Yeah, so as far as how many leads that are on their plate, our rule of thumb is that we want to have no more than 10 to 15 new leads per day per closer. And then we want them to have 40 to 60 of their nurture follow-up conversations. So no more than that. Anything greater than that becomes too much for them to keep up with. And then if for some reason they do go over that, we're going to do a pipeline review and we'll pass some of these colder opportunities over to the follow-up specialist to make sure they're nurturing that. And then when it is truly ready to be handed over to a closer, they can do that at that time.
I think when you're originally building the company, something to think about is you never really want 1 or 2 closers in general, because it's having 3 closers minimum is like insurance for the company. And what I mean by that is if you have 1 closer and they get fired or quit, then you're screwed. And if you have 2 closers and you get fired, one of them gets fired or quit, you're still screwed because it really impacts your revenue. When you have 3, the 2 can typically pick up what the third was doing until a third one is sitting in the seat. And so you don't see as drastic of an impact to the company. And so when you're in what I call the build phase of the company, I would say that you really need to strive towards getting to at least 3 closers and then some follow-up specialists, just so like for the stability of the company.
And a lot of that depends on what is the revenue goal. And obviously it's going to change also based on the average profit per deal that you have. We have an entire process that we take our one-on-one students through, saying, okay, here's the revenue goal, here's reverse engineering, how many deals that means. And then based on how many deals that means, these are the number of people that we have to have on the team that's going to contribute this consistently.
Okay, that makes a ton of sense. So help me understand this. I mean, I understand you guys basically tore down the business and rebuilt it from the ground up. You probably thought more than just a little bit about what that structure should look like, who you should hire, when you should hire them. So I want to dig into some of that stuff. I'm looking at this. Like, let's just say I'm just a guy doing deals. And my goal is to one day be like Tiffany and Josh High, where I have this company that's thriving. And I'm looking at it from the standpoint of I should have 3 closers. Going from 0 to 3 is quite a big jump, right? The revenue would have to grow quite a bit to support that. So how do you view that in those beginning stages? Do you suggest that you just have to grow really fast, or is it kind of like you're going to have a period where you'll have 1, maybe 2 closers, and the goal is to get to 3 as quickly as you can? Like, how do you approach how many people to hire at the beginning when you don't have the revenue that supports that larger number, even though it gives the business a lot more security?
Yeah, I would say there's no one size fits all offer to that, because everyone has different budgets, different savings, different skill sets. What's the most important thing to think about before hiring in general is really the infrastructure. And what happens in our industry more than ever is people just like get told that they should have this acquisitions team. They hire a closer, they maybe hand them a script, they ask them to shadow them. They have no scorecards, no tracking, no performance management system, and they just kind of wing it. And then they wonder why it becomes complete stress, chaos, and we're missing opportunity. And so ultimately, when you're in what I call survival mode, which is where you're like a 1-2-man show, and you're getting ready to bring on your first hire, or hell, you're bringing on your 3rd, 4th, doesn't matter. We need to think about the following things. We need proper onboarding. And so what does onboarding look like? We have a 14-day onboarding process, but the first week is nothing but videos, quizzes, assessments, flashcards, and we want to make sure, are they retaining the information before I just go throw them on a phone? Because we don't recruit anyone with real estate experience. So we want them to come in fresh, and we're going to groom them into what we want them to become. And so when your onboarding's that damn good, they should lock up an average of like 5 to 7 contracts in their first 30 days on the phone. If they're not, then the onboarding is a problem. Like if you have brought on a closer and they're not, well, first of all, if you have a closer doing under 5 deals a month, then there's a problem in general. So we'd have to start on, did you onboard them properly? Did we train them daily, right? Because I always like to use the analogy around sports. If we take Michael Jordan, for example, does he train daily or once a week? He trains daily, right? And so many people in our industry like barely train once a week. And then they wonder why their sales team's not consistent. From there, we want to make sure, are we setting proper expectations and priorities with them? So do we have the proper meetings to communicate clearly? So there are daily huddles, daily sales training, there's weekly one-on-ones, and then we have weekly sales call audits. So what is a call audit? This is something that so many people in the industry skip when it comes to hiring people, and they should be doing it to themselves if they're a one-man show or having a coach do it. And ultimately, what does Michael Jordan do after every single basketball game? Watches film. And so he has, how many coaches watching film, pause, play, X's, O's, handing him a playbook to say, hey, before the next game, you have to ring this in. And so sales is no different. It is a sport. And so it is our job as leaders to do multiple sales call audits a week, or we can't really expect them to rein back in performance. And if you're not doing call audits in general, then how do we even know what opportunities we're missing out on? And so ultimately, if we want the Michael Jordans, we have to become the Michael Jordan coach. We also got to think about our systems. So when it comes to the phone system, if Michael Jordan's dribbling down the court with his team, what is the coach doing on the sideline? They're calling out plays, they're coaching the team, etc. So it should be no different on the sales floor. If we need to make sure that we have a phone system that we can leverage different features to coach the person live, the last thing you want to do is have someone on a sales call messing up an opportunity and then not getting coached live if you can save the deal today. And so by not leveraging the right systems could cost you a minimum. Like if you're not using that and you have a team, I'm guaranteeing you that you're losing 2 to 3 deals a month on your already marketing spend. And so we've got to be able to coach people live and say, hey, say this next, because the seller can't hear you if you're using the right features. From there, see, we have one-on-ones is tracking, right? And so there's a lot of people that do in-person appointments, phone sales. There's really no right or wrong answer, but here's the difference. When you do phone sales, you can record the call for training. You can perform sales call audits. You can track proper KPIs. You have less liability, less risk with people on the roads, where in-person appointments, I can't record the conversation, which means I can't performance manage, which means I can't coach or track the right KPIs. And so I guess it'd be like, which one do you want? Do you want to be able to performance manage people, or do you think that going to in-person appointments is the only way you build rapport? And so ultimately, those are some big things that I see in the industry. And when we're looking to hire, I recommend do not hire anyone until you invest in the proper onboarding, training, trackers, scorecards, all of that.
And to Tiff's point around how everyone's situation is different as far as how fast they want to move, how much they have available to invest into the business. This is exactly why we believe in, our high ticket program is one-on-one coaching, because there is no one size fits all. It's truly, where are you? How do you define success, and how can we help you get there? And we will look at that goal. And for some people, it might make sense to set milestones in building up to the 3-person team that you were talking about. Other people might say, let's hire 5 now, knowing 3 are going to work. So there's everything in between. So that's why we believe in having a real personalized approach to building out the business.
That makes a lot of sense. I can tell you a lot of the things you're talking about are the lessons I've had to learn too. So like I see the value of what you're saying. The person who's doing all of this, like if you were just to look at the organizational chart or even an accountability chart, and so there were a few things that you mentioned. I'm probably going to miss one. Like the onboarding process has to be really dialed in. You have to have the one-on-one, basically leading the individual. You have to have the calls or the call reviews on a weekly basis, and then you're probably gonna have daily team trainings. Is that like you have one sales manager and that person does all those things, or do you view this as like multiple or different roles? How do you usually structure it?
So our sales manager manages our entire acquisitions team. That's everything from our closers, also known as acquisition specialists, and our follow-up specialists, also known as lead managers. Not only does he overlook them, but he also oversees our disposition specialists as well. And we did that intentionally. Back in Q4 of 2022, interest rates started they more than doubled. And at that time, there was a lot of fear. And our sales manager is the one fear from buyers and fear from people in real estate investing in general. Well, we knew that we had to have our ear to the pavement and understanding how people were adjusting their buying criteria to make sure we were still able to move deals. And since our sales manager is the one giving the green light on every single offer in the acquisitions department, he has to know how our dispo person's conversations with these buyers are going. So he oversees both departments, and our sales manager is the one that holds every single one-on-one, does all of the daily training as well as the call reviews.
And then we also have a coach with results driven that coaches our sales team. So we do that for other people's teams, but they also help Sage, our sales manager, do twice as many call audits and do sales coaching.
Okay, that's cool. So that's a resource you provide to people so they can kind of see how they're doing on their side and get an external perspective from someone that's seen.
So we have dedicated sales coaches and results driven that their sole role is to train other people's acquisitions teams, and they perform the call audits for them.
That's very cool. It's huge value add. That's like the dirty work of business. It's just stuff that, like, I don't think I have yet to find somebody on my team who loves that kind of work. It's usually like really impactful. Maybe you guys have found great people who love it, but it seems like that's usually the thing that goes on the back burner because it's one of the least exciting to just like review and audit and see how we're doing.
Sounds like you got to get some new people.
I have people that do it, but I guess the point is I think a lot of companies stop doing that or they don't do it consistently enough.
Yeah, I think you're spot on. What we've seen from a lot of people coming out to like our workshops and stuff is the first thing that goes away when it becomes busy, or it's the easiest thing to let go of is the one-on-one and the call reviews.
Yeah.
Which are ultimately what keeps performance there. So if those are going away, it's really driven from the top. So like ultimately we have to have a culture of training and an accountability.
You know, Tiff has a saying around this that I absolutely love, and she says, inconsistent leadership leads to inconsistent results. And so if we're not there consistently showing up for these one-on-ones, for these call reviews, for the daily huddles, for the daily training, how could we ever possibly expect to have consistent results?
Yeah, I think Stephen Covey would call those like quadrant 2 activities, meaning the things that like are important, but they're not urgent. It's not going to make a difference like today if we're having one-on-ones with the team, most likely, but it is like doing that consistently over a long period of time definitely could. So that's interesting. I'm curious, you guys I've at least recognized you as both unique leaders. What would you say is something that you do in leadership that you feel like a lot of people would disagree with?
Disagree with?
You
or
know,
maybe
actually,
that's surprising to them.
So I made a post on my Instagram story yesterday about this, and I did a poll to see if people agreed or disagreed, and it was around the topic of, I saw someone post on their Instagram that as a sales manager, you should always remember and have the drive and want to jump in and show your team how it's done, meaning get on the phones and lock up deals yourself. And more of my belief is if you have the right process in place and you are consistently showing up with all of the things that we just talked about, you shouldn't have to jump in to show them exactly how it's done. With the daily training, with the call reviews, with the check the box sales process that we have, they should be able to perform consistently to the point where I don't need to do that.
Fascinating. So if I'm understanding you right, you don't ever jump on the phone with sellers, close deals, anything like that. You focus 100% on I'm building the system, I'm building the people, and the people are doing the deals.
Exactly. And I would say 2020 or 2021 was the last time I was on the phone with a seller.
Fair enough. Is your sales manager the same? Does he take that exact same approach and he's never on the phone with sellers? He's just
the only thing that he does, he doesn't jump in and take a lead from new lead to close. He'll jump in and do what we call manager follow-ups. But that's a part of our sales process. If we feel that it's going to benefit the company for him to do a follow-up, a touch point to check in and see where things are at, he'll do those things. But he's not taking a new lead, calling it and taking it through the sales process from there.
Yeah, fair enough. Yeah, that's fantastic. And I would say less put in practice. I mean, I found myself that it's like if you have the right, like when I have the right people on my team, in a certain team, they actually can, like, for the longest time, I did not understand the idea that your team could be better than you at these things. And it was just that I didn't have the right team. And then at some point you get the team and you realize like that's actually possible. And you like handicap them a little bit when you're in there.
Yeah, no, I would agree. I mean, I like to think about being a basketball player, and if the coach continuously stepped onto the court and stole the ball from his own team to go and do a score or do a layup or whatever, like you're not allowing the development of your team members to get to the point where the coach doesn't have to do that. So it's like we think we're helping, but we're hurting more than we're helping when we do that.
Sure.
Yeah, I would say it's probably a mindset thing for folks. Is I've always had the belief that it's my job and my responsibility to hire people better than me at everything that they do. So I've always wanted to make sure in the recruiting process that each individual role that I hire is 10 times better than I ever could be at that individual role. And as the CEO or the leader, my job is really mainly focused on people, talent, development, and recruiting and strategy from there. So I think it's all like mindset when we first start a company of like thinking that we can't be, or other people can't be better than us. But the longer someone has that mindset, the longer they'll be stuck in like the doer mode.
And I would say there's a lot of things that could make that belief true, like things that Tiff mentioned around if we don't have the proper onboarding, we're not teaching them what to do and exactly how to do it. So how could they ever be as good or better than we could be, right? Or are. Now, there was something about this. Hold on, what were we?
One thing about onboarding in our industry, not everyone came from like a background of being a sales manager or a sales leader. And I look at, like, for example, in results driven, like, I don't know how to make a paid funnel work. I don't know how to connect these things. I don't know how to make a camera work. And so ultimately what I would recommend for folks that are like, well, I don't know how to build the onboarding, I've never been a sales manager, is to hire someone that already has it. And so what I do in almost every role that I don't personally know or mastered, if I haven't mastered it personally, then I hire an external company to either build it or that already has it and coach them up on it, just to at least provide the tool and resource.
So I remember what I was going to say there for a second. At the biggest aha moment for us that shifted us from the deal chaser to building a team and really developing our leadership skills was, do you remember we were at this event and someone came up to you and said, when are you going to stop chasing deals and start chasing heads? Talk about that for a second.
Yeah, I think it was like my second year in business, but he walked up to me and was like, the owner all they should do is recruit heads, because every time you spend all this energy chasing the next deal, that deal might be worth, say, 15 to 20 grand. But if you chase the next head and onboard them, then they're worth 50 to 75,000 a month. And so ultimately that's just been my focus ever since then, is just building people, teams, and development. And that's really how we've gotten to where we're at.
Yeah, what I love about what you guys do, just knowing your products that you have in the coaching program, and that kind of thing, is it's all authentic in the sense that every step along the way, based on your story, you are utilizing resources like that, the best resources that you could find, even from the beginning, where you said, Tiffany, that you had to fire 75% of your team. You did that because you found somebody who understood more about the business than you did, and you listened to them.
Yep.
That's how you got to the next level. You're doing the same thing today.
Yeah.
I'm sure with external people and even with your leadership team.
Yes, I am.
Listening to people.
Spending a lot on coaches.
You're spending money on coaches and on team members that might as well be coaches, in the sense that they understand much more about what they're doing than you do about their job. It's crazy and very inspiring what you guys are doing. So for anybody that's not familiar with results driven and how exactly you help people, and we talked about like some of the aspects of it today, but how would you summarize, if somebody's looking at different coaching programs and they're on the fence about joining one, what things they should be looking into to ensure that program has to make sure they're going to get the best success they can?
Yeah, I think it just really depends on what you're trying to accomplish. For results driven, we are all about, our products are on purpose in the way that they are. We're all about building the foundation first. Like, at the end of the day, if you're building a team and you don't have diversified marketing, the right scorecards, tracking, the right sales process, onboarding, trainings, all of that, you're going to scale complete chaos, just like I did in my second year. And so we first start at the foundation, and then we move on to, okay, how do we put in systems for recruiting, onboarding, training, and performance managing people? And then we hold your hand doing it if they want to do that. But ultimately, like, if you're looking to learn how to construct deals, results driven is not necessarily for you. We're all about putting the business, the team, we're all about leverage. So how do we leverage people, time, money, resources, so we can do what we want, when we want, with who we want? And that's really why people got into real estate, not just to make more money, but to also gain time freedom. And the only way you get time back is through people.
I think it's also important to talk about the difference between like coaching and like classroom type style versus like mastermind style.
Yeah, and there's there's masterminds, and then there's coaching, and then there's one-on-one coaching. And we are very specific about one-on-one coaching because I think everyone is in a different position. And I just wish that, like, when I look back, someone actually pulled out my scorecards, held my hand, told me exactly what to do, when to do it, and was very tactical in my business. Where when I was like in one-to-many coaching, not that I didn't get value, I just didn't get in the business tactical day-to-day value. And masterminds are also amazing, but if you're looking for tactical advice day-to-day in the business to drive it forward, then coaching is really what you're looking for. Masterminds are more for like connections, networking, motivation, obviously like being surrounded by people that are going through the same things as you. So they both serve purpose. It's just a matter of what you're looking for.
Okay, understood. If somebody's interested in learning more about it, where do they go?
I actually just came out with a new book, and it's called The 26 Biggest Mistakes I Made While Scaling My 7-Figure Real Estate Business. And it's online. It's a virtual ebook, and it's at rdebook.com. So RD for results driven ebook.com. And you can download it there, and it literally walks you through all of like these critical moments and stories in building the business and how you can avoid all these very expensive mistakes I made along the way. So
yeah, and then we're also on Instagram. On Instagram, we're always documenting the things that are working well, things that are not going well, and how we're pivoting and adjusting. So Tiffany's is Tiffany High Official, and I'm Josh High Official on Instagram.
Very cool. Well, thank you both for taking the time today and sharing some of your wisdom with us. For anybody listening, I will see you next week.